have another special guest up. The last time I saw this gentleman was in 2019, and we actually did not know each other until we started racing on our indoor track, Underground, and DeepRacer Underground, we actually dubbed it, in 2020, and holding it strong for the entire duration of the pandemic. I am going to turn it over and let him do the introduction. I'm going to call him by a name just because it's his handle out there. DBro, why don't you give us an introduction?
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. But DBro is a perfectly good name for me. It's what my wife calls me as well.
Wait, your wife calls you that too?
Yeah. So full name, Darren Broderick. Work for Liberty Mutual, and I'm a DeepRacer pro racer, if that sounds impressive enough.
Oh, you are. You're very well known at the track and by my kids. Trust me.
Oh, yes. With the hopefully sometimes a good model shows up and they have something to chase, and that gets them the exercise.
Oh yeah, we'll tell you what, we'll get and we'll talk about some of your models and everything. In fact, we can talk DeepRacer the entire time for this and reinvent a little bit.
Cool.
Let's give a little bit of a story of background on yourself. What do you do at Liberty Mutual, and how does that translate to DeepRacer?
Yeah, so DeepRacer, Liberty Mutual. I've been with Liberty Mutual since I've graduated, so this is my 9th year. And you're right, in 2019, an email came out from my manager. DeepRacer had just started in 2018 in the December period at reInvent. And Liberty were thinking about doing a huge, big internal competition where we would have the 2018 track, which is the original track for DeepRacer, and invite as many as 400 developers to make 65 teams. And that would be held in Boston weekly, monthly, dependent on availability. AWS were on the scene to support and run the track and set up the cars. And then they just got started into racing, so everybody was accessed on the Sandbox account. We all started making models, learning about what it meant. DeepRacer TV had just started. Amsterdam, a summit had happened, so we were playing on YouTube and finding out what reinforcement learning was all about, what machine learning really was. I hadn't worked in that space. I'm a senior software developer, but I mainly work with JavaScript, Kotlin, WebEnd, and DB. So that kind of space always interested me. But DeepRacer was a really, really good way to start looking at the beginnings of machine learning, and especially reinforcement learning, probably the easier of the three main types.
Okay, let's talk about the reinforcement learning and DeepRacer. We can get into the weeds a little bit. Sure. So we're back here in reInvent 2022. You and I, we have a picture of this, by the way. Yes. You started racing on DeepRacer Underground in 2020. And we're like, hey, I was there. I was actually the timekeeper of most of the tracks for the racing in the championship. And we have a picture. You were there, and David was there. We were all like kind of managing. Him and I were like the tag team of during this. And we're like, yeah, we know each other. Well, coincidentally, you had a picture to prove it. Yeah. We've been waiting for this time to actually get back and get into person, be like, oh yeah, this is finally happening.
Yeah. 2019 came and gone. It was an amazing competition, really, really quick. The three of us managed to set a world record for nearly 1 hour before Sola from DMP knocked us off the podium. But I remember when I started hearing your voice and seeing your face on Underground, I was like, that's the guy that did the stopwatch for me, because I remember it was 8.91 seconds. You were like, that lap's good. And then the horns went off, and Blaine came over, and Ryan came over, and David was pissed.
So I was the guy for that thing with the horns, and that's why you remembered me. Okay. So we didn't know each other. There was no favoritism. I was the guy that was strictly on the time and hit it. They've improved the timing sessions over everything and the automation behind it. But that's pretty cool. That was something you owned it for an hour, you said?
Yeah. About 55 minutes before it was announced.
Wow, you even got it down to 55 minutes. I'm not keeping track of time at all.
Yeah, it was just, Blaine was like, not even an hour later, and it's broken again. It was a significant improvement from, so I think it was another half a second quicker. So I knew that's when it was going to be very, very tough to compete or even get into the finals at that point.
Well, congratulations on that. Let's talk about, I want to talk about DeepRacer Underground, because that has been key. A lot of folks have said that's been key to keeping DeepRacer alive during the whole pandemic.
Absolutely.
I want you to share your story. I have my perspective, but from a participating member, right? You were always on the board to raise. You always sent me models. Whenever I'd have the track set up, you were like, hey, John, can you run this? And I was like, yeah, I'll run it. Talk to me about that. What were your feelings on DeepRacer Underground?
So They're only positive. DeepRacer Underground, pretty much for me, I was always first in and last out if I was watching streams or submitting models. But yeah, to go right back before it, so 2020, everything was gearing up to be really, really big for DeepRacer. You and David Smith looked like you were going to be pretty much sharing the summit Camerota. I had my flights, hotel, everything booked for London. I definitely wanted to go more than one. Something happened in the world, so everything had to go shut down. And I'm not too sure when the first underground started. I know everything about where it was, almost your address for the fact in your basement, but it guaranteed or absolutely was a lifesaver for DeepRacer. I don't think the physical aspect would have survived, or we would have lost a lot of racers, or new racers wouldn't have come on the scene unless they didn't have someone enthusiastic or sharing like a good streaming or giving people an opportunity to try and keep DeepRacer going, because 2019 has such a big buzz. Underground was like another way to keep that going as well. And you changed location as well. I know we both know plenty about it, so we can definitely talk a lot about Underground, but it switched over to London the odd time as well, so that helped people with different time zones. But you're always able to just submit models to yourself through Slack, and then it was all recorded, so people didn't have to watch live, but they were always, I think, always very appreciative. Hopefully, and you ran plenty of competitions. You were giving away credits at times. And I think that really helped people kind of compete in the virtual environment as well, because that's when AWS had to find some alternative with not having any physical summits. We didn't know when they would be back. Everyone thought it would only be a couple of months. Turned out it was going to be 2.5 years. And those credits, I think, really helped a lot of people understand now what they needed to do, especially me. I'd only ever been a physical racer. What kind of virtual aspects, because the two are so wildly different.
Talking about DeepRacer Underground, it's a huge. First of all, I got to thank PTP from Pinnacle Technologies. I was in Boston. I did an event for them, and they had this tile track. And I remember the specific moment that I was walking my dog, and I remembered this track. And I was like, I'm going to set this up in my basement. And I contacted them, and in the next week, they FedExed me their entire track. It was like 6 boxes of tiles. And my basement, I want to say, isn't huge or whatever it is. I had to modify the track into certain turns to kind of give it. Yeah. But what I wanted to do, and this wasn't me, this was for the community. And David Smith was always joining in. He was my cohort over in the UK, where he joined into this crazy idea. I was a PSA for cloud management tools. I was just helping out with DeepRacer, and it was a passion to play around with these and get it. We had a lot of lessons learned. They were the first ones to put on the event. We had a five series event. We didn't have many show up. It was very like, we actually went down to like 3. We had enough races for 3. Yeah. But we learned so much on the way of how to fine tune my basement to get the most out of this. We learned that my white walls were causing issues. So I got blue drapes for the siding to match. Everything. I actually had them ship out like the barriers, and we tried it at another location to get a full track set up at that. I even purchased blank tiles and made my own track so it could curve around there and blend in.
Yes. Because remember you had it at I don't know if it was like a gym hall, but you also had it outside as well.
Yeah, well, I had it outside. I tried it outside at next to my pool. So it worked. The lighting worked for it. And my kids were my pick. They were a lifesaver during the pandemic because they could participate. I could schedule them anytime to join in and be like, in between schoolwork, because it was no set time. When they went back to school, I actually had to schedule events when they were home. I had to base everything off my kids' availability doing it. But I first of all, I thank my wife for allowing me to do this crazy thing from my basement streaming.
Good call.
It was crazy. I thank my kids for always helping out. My wife was there as a timekeeper. I had some friends, David, always helping out. The biggest thing I got to thank is the community. Everybody wanted to do this. They loved it. They enjoyed it. And I did it for them. You know, it would be a whole day affair to set up the track, the stream, and everything to get this going.
No, absolutely. And I probably should follow as well and thank my own wife for many models. Like how many times she would come into the kitchen or office, wherever I'm working.
You had a track too, and did you set up something in your house?
I had so Lyndon, like who had set up the Slack community DeepRacer along with Thomas. I bought a really, really simple, small oval track. It's not actually a track you can ever train on the DeepRacer console or anything like that, but it was something just to have because, again, I thought 2020 was going to get really big. I need to like be able to practice on something, but I would love something a bit bigger. But it was nice to have something that looked like a track, but again, it's a really small oval shape. You know, if you had a model, it would probably take like 3 seconds to go around the track. It wouldn't be much of a world record, but for the underground stuff, you know, you were the only guys doing anything in the entire world with DeepRacer. Amazon couldn't do a thing with the physical aspect, but they put a lot of work into trying to beef up the virtual and keep it really, really international. But as you say, you invited everybody in the community to come. A lot of people submitted models or requested tips or advice through that, and that was a really good way of reaching out to try and help improve things. And again, as you said, when you had the track in your basement, you had to make some modifications, but you were always trying to find ways to improve things. So whether you were adding a GoPro to the top of the car, and
I stickied it on, and we had a nice, cool little promo for it.
Yeah, and I remember you tried different camera locations as well, and you put them into the Streamlabs or OBS overlays, whatever you're using at the time, to try and just not only make it more interesting, but it would give a lot more perspectives for trying, as a racer, me to understand more about the model I had submitted and its behavior to what I thought it should achieve. It's always easy to see that in the virtual aspect because you can download the logs, you can look at your graphs, you can look at your timesheets, but until it can either A or B do it on the track, you have no clear indication if your thoughts or your experiments have worked out.
One of the things, everything that we did for DeepRacer Underground has traversed to what DeepRacer, or added to what DeepRacer is today. Yeah. If you look at the stuff, it's only improved. David's done an excellent job on it, but the community's been so involved in everything. I was over at the track, and I heard they use one of your models as a, what is it, DeepRacer? What's the model that you submitted where it's like take it easy or something? It's
so there's two great models that I think we both know well. The underground model that we really enjoyed together.
We're not, don't spell it yet. The version number. No. What's the?
We'll come back to that.
Yeah,
that's almost a spoiler alert. But the demo model is called a DBro Play It Safe.
That's what it is. Play it safe. They use that to test to make sure that the cars are good, to track it, and that it validates that everything's calibrated correctly.
Yeah, that it's fair to the next racer that yes, this car should be able to just track given the calibration of the car and the lighting and the conditions there.
How's it feel that they're using your model to calibrate and everything? I mean, you've come a long way from utilizing machine learning and testing things out and reinforcement and your improvements on your code, that now they're using this. AWS is using your model internally to validate things.
Yeah, it's very appreciated. Like, a lot of people are just very thankful they have something that they can rely on. What's good about when you've trained a model in any fashion, when it can do its job, it should more or less continue doing its job. There might be a track that model can't really handle in the future. It's very dependent on what way it can process the cornering that I've trained it on. The model itself was only meant to be something for David Smith for a London Expo event he did. I said, would you like a model that will just stay on track? It'll do nothing fancy, but while you're talking to customers, you could just leave it going, and maybe that will attract a few more people. It turned out it was actually pretty good generally, and it was able to do very well on the 2018 track, which it was never trained for. I only trained it for the championship 2019 track. So it was a nice example to show that a model can be generalized in the real world and the virtual world. And from that, you can, as you say, calibrate the cars, test on a few different tracks. But I think it's made the staff lives a lot easier when they want to set cars up quickly and have something that they don't have to change. And it's got a wee bit famous across the world. There's a few people that know my name, and I've never met them before, only because I've slapped my name against it. So I try to get a patent, maybe get like 10 cents every time.
Every time they use it.
If it gets used, but apparently it doesn't work that way.
Well, think about it. Every time it gets used. All right, now we're going to talk about DBro 6.
Oh, yes.
DBro 6, by the way, it's on this laptop. I carry it with me. No, I will not run it at any races. I was over at the track, and they're like, hey, where are you race your model? I was like, I got a DBro 6. How's that? And they're like, I was like, yeah, I can't use that. That wouldn't be fair to anybody. DBro 6 was that my go-to model when we did DeepRacer Underground. My kids know your name, by the way, from everything that we've done DeepRacer Underground, but also when we would say we're running DBro's model, they would rest up because they knew they were going to go fast and chase this car. There weren't many off tracks. They were literally had to keep going around and get it as quick as possible.
Yeah, there's plenty of videos and clips that you've shared or up on your YouTube or my YouTube. It's a source of pride for myself to know the DBro V6 was something that could run very well on your track, because lighting was always an issue in any aspect, and you did very well in your basement because you have a pillar as well that would, car didn't really seem to care. If you've looked only far enough ahead to see the next corner, that was never an issue, which was really, really nice. It was nicely positioned, or you nicely positioned the track around the pillar. Sometimes it's very hard to replicate it. I never was able to make another DBro V6.
You've tried. We've had versions of DBro 6 this or that, or I dash DBro 6 old, whatever it is.
Yes.
They just didn't do DBro 6 justice.
No, can't hold a candle to it. Unfortunately, some things are just locked as they are, and you can take the experience and the learnings from it, but it also shows the randomness that can come with machine learning as well, that you could run or train 10, 12, 30 models. One of them will be the best out of those, but maybe one of those 30 will always be the best if you trained another 30 or another 100. Again, it's just how entropy values and the conversion of those work, that if you're sometimes, and it's Vegas, sometimes if you're lucky enough,
you want to gamble on that?
the action space is aligned to like really good timing for the car and the frame rates and things like that. There's a lot of aspects there we can get into if we need to, but sometimes fingers crossed is also a good racing strategy.
I'm going to ask you some quick tips and tricks on DeepRacer and training the model. If somebody who is looking to get into DeepRacer and wants to start racing their models, what are some things that they can do to just get started on it?
So let's say you've never seen DeepRacer before and you want to win the championship. You have to beat some very, very fast racers, people far faster than me, unfortunately, at this point. But I would recommend that you check out the console workshop. And so step one, check out the console workshop. You get 10 hours free for a new account, and that's 10 hours of training. It's a one-time thing. If you're a student that reevaluates, or you get reimbursed every 10 hours every month or something along those lines. Step two, if it's not more important, step one is definitely join the Slack community. It's probably one of the best communities in the world for learning something new that everybody wants to win, but everybody wants to help each other do better. So someone sets a 15-second lap, that beats your 15.1 second. You're actually happy about that, even though you're disappointed for yourself. It's quite strange. There's prizes to be won, but people want to see their cars do well. So just Google DeepRacer Slack community. It's free to join. You'll be well welcomed. You can ask as many questions as you want there. But say you've already done those two things, what's the next step? So in the physical world, if that's what you're interested in, virtual is a wee bit different. We can definitely hop back to that if we need to. Unfortunately, you need a wee bit of experience. So if you can get to your nearest AWS summit, double check that they have a DeepRacer track. I know this year was pretty good for a lot of summits. They had at least one track, if not two. And it depends if you're East Coast or European. They might have more than one track as well. Make a model and bring it down. I would make a couple. You're likely to get around a couple of times around the track. You get 3 minutes. Best lap stays on the leaderboard. Record it as well. If it's not recorded or streamed, definitely record it on your phone or ask someone to record it for you. There's a lot to learn from watching your model, and it goes so quick you'll forget to do that. So grab as much evidence as you can of the performance. The models you bring a couple, and also while you're running, there's something you can do if you're not familiar with as well, and check with the pit crew that they can show you can change your model. And that means that you can switch to a different DeepRacer model and try that on the track as well. It takes about 15 to 20 seconds, but if you ask nice, they'll pause the time for you.
A little insight for it.
Not on a championship. Not a championship.
Yeah.
But for summits this time, I think that's more than fair for definitely a new DeepRacer. Hopefully pro level.
That's
coming
customer
on the scene.
obsession there to pause the time with all everybody else lined up, as long as they're transferring like maybe one model for it. But that's nice.
When we're pausing the time, we're really talking 15 seconds, but it's to give the pit boss time to reset the car, to give the racer the best chance to get the lap time they have. If you have a good lap time with your model, consider changing anyway, just to see if your other experiments have worked out. It's a really, really big trial and error process with reinforcement learning. You're trying to incentivize a car or an agent, as it's called, to get around a track as quickly as you can. Unfortunately, that car, that reward function, none of that really matters in terms of time on a lap unless you incentivize it to be so. So that's looking at your speed and your progress, looking at the track and cornering or center line. There's loads and loads of approaches. So try out a couple of different approaches, really different approaches for your models. Try different tracks as well. I don't know what step we're on. Let's say we're on step 4.
Yeah, we'll just pick one.
Step 4, train your model on different tracks. So that's using the track that you're going to expect for the summit to be used, but also a few other tracks that, especially that have been used physically, just to make sure your model hasn't been something called overfitted to the track, where it becomes very rigid to the virtual environment where it's been trained, and it can very easily fall prey to the barriers or the walls or people looking over it, or it loses focus on the track lines or sees too far ahead to another part of a track line. That was the challenge for this year's championship track, which we can talk on if need be. Step 6, I think I said step 5 ready. If not, the next step would be, and coming to the end probably as well, is after you've tried those areas, make sure you record the lap times if they've got your video. Compare what the two models have done together, but ask questions as well. There's bound to be a few community experts there that are racing. They can give their thoughts or insights. A lot of them have a good eye for a model. They can guess maybe how you've trained it, or what ways you can improve. And you might have time that day actually to go back into the console, clone or train a new model from something you've learned, and have a go again. Usually if a summit is 1 day long, that's 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. If it's 2 days, you've got more than enough time to train another model and go back around. And you couldn't ask enough questions. There's a lot to learn. It should be fun to learn, and it should really help you if you're trying to get into the machine learning space, because it'll teach you a lot of new concepts, make things a lot straightforward if you've never heard of any of these terms before, like overfitting, convergence, inferring your model. And I think that all comes together to pretty much an obsession at this point, that if you want to race virtually or physically, you can do so in a fun way, but also in a way that you can meet a lot of new people as well. So a step, whatever the last step is, make sure you enjoy it as well.
Is there just a couple more things before we wrap it up? Is there ever a chance of you overtraining your model?
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest problems. It's safer to undertrain your model and then clone maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour, and keep iterating on that till you've gotten what you think your model or your reward function or your approach can do at its best, and then try something different. Now, if you've, to touch on it very likely, if you have overfitted your model, it's hard to always know that's the root cause of a model's issue. My best guess is an overfitted model will be very jiggly. So the wheels will start going. It looks like it's having a tough time making a decision on the track. That's usually a good sign for overfitting. It's not the sign you want to see, but it's a good sign of it. But you can save your model, in quotes, by training on a different track. You can actually overfit the model by underfitting it again. So you can bring that model out of its bad habits by training on a different track and just making sure you're keeping it honest. Pretty much, there's a lot of fluffy analogies we could say that, the way we've some people have described training a dog and things like that. You can very easily the model can forget the things you want it to do well. My best advice: so if you think after an hour it's not going to do well, I'm very cutthroat with my models. I would just get rid of it, train a new one, and train it for a little less next time.
All right, my next one's a challenging question. How you doing here at reInvent 2022 and all your models?
Okay, yeah. So I've got I don't know how much time we've got left, so I'll discuss very quickly how I was nearly put out and how I've actually done quite well overall. So the competition has ended. It finished on Tuesday, and Wednesday was the finals. So I came sixth overall, which was a delight to me.
That's really good considering all the people racing around the world.
Yeah. A delight for me in the sense that I was 28th at one point. So round one, the top 30 went through to day two for round two. Day two had round 2, 3, and 4. And I was very, very lucky. It was a nail biter. I was sitting on 20th or 18th and 20th, and then you look 20 minutes later and you're sitting 28th, and the cutoff point is there's 10 racers left and you need 5 of them to beat you or something like that. So yeah, I came 20th, and then I was lucky enough that the expo, because we did round one at the MGM, and actually if you're hanging about reInvent, you can go down and practice on those test tracks at the MGM arena. It's right next to the shuttles as well, and the registration decks where you would pick up your pass. So we went to the expo, and my model was doing far, far better. They used a different surface. So although I say go and test your models at the MGM if you want maybe a more championship experience, the expo in the Venetian, the Sands Expo, sort of in the back right area. That's where the track is. My model performed a lot better, and I redeemed myself as a pro racer that I thought I should be able to do a bit better. So made it to the top 8, and it was a very similar format to 2019 where we went into head-to-head. So one versus another player, another racer, and we switch models, or not switch models, we never did that, switched cars. And I was able just to make it into the top 6. Fourth, fifth, and sixth were almost the same in that sense, but first, second, and third from NYCU, the students there cleaned house, absolutely cleaned house. My fastest time was 14.4 seconds, a time I'm definitely proud of. The world record held by is 13.7 seconds. Sounds close, but when you're coming down to the tightest times you can make, that 0.7 seconds or 0.6 seconds is huge, really, really huge, and that was very, very impressive. So first, second, and third went to very deserving racers. Fourth, fifth, and sixth we were very pleased as well. We were hoping we could beat one of them because one of them had to go into the losers bracket, but no, they cleaned house, and we all 6 of us were able to go to the keynote on Wednesday morning, which was a nice treat as well, and a wee bit of prize money. Not as much as first place, unfortunately, but and first place will also get a free ticket for 2023. So next year we'll have 4 NYCU students to beat. So the challenge there will be what we as a community can come together and try and see where we can be really competitive, because those guys are going to come back probably faster and stronger. But I think that's the exciting part as well.
I love it. I love the competition, and always enjoying coming back, not only racing virtually, physically. I know we didn't get to discuss anything about physical versus virtual. I think we're going to have to do that on another podcast or another series. You're always welcome to join mine for some of those chats that's happening on. You know, we'll have a good time at that. I'm on the East Coast, here in the UK. It's only about 5-6 hour difference.
Yeah, but 6 hours.
Yeah, no, just across the pond, right? For it. So, DBro, I really appreciate you joining me for this and actually making your way over to our live stream and our podcast that's happening, giving some insights on the ground that's reInvent 2022 back here full-fledged. I mean, I think we're double the amount of people from last year, and we're surpassing just opinions. I don't have any official numbers from 2019, but everything is packed and everybody's happy to be back in person. My last question for you is, if people want to reach out to you, follow along on what you're doing, what's the best way?
I would say definitely whatever. I think it was step 2 for the Slack community. Everyone's available there. So my name will be Darren Broderick. And
no, not DBro. Oh, okay.
It's all there. I want to make sure people can find me both. LinkedIn as well. I think if you just search DBro, that comes up pretty easily.
Does it come up LinkedIn as DBro?
Yeah, I believe so. Some of the pick we were searching for it, and they just said, "Oh, you just type DBro, and there it is," because they wanted to share a couple of pictures they took. If you're around today, definitely I'm always approachable on the track. Even if I'm racing, I usually can chat away if I just set my model down. I'll hopefully be at some summits. This year I was at the Brussels one for myself, but AWS hosted me for Berlin and Paris just as a community expert to just encourage DeepRacer to answer questions, whether it was someone like here that was new, or a racer that has raced and wanted help. And I'm more than willing to, share secrets as such, but there's no secrets to share because they're already all public. Sometimes new things come out, and we try and share those as well.
Yeah, the community is always helpful. You heard it here. Join the Slack community or follow them on LinkedIn. You can also follow them on Twitter while it's still around. Yes, it is Thursday, and it's still here. We're wrapping up our last and final stream, day 4 of AWS reInvent 2022. DBro, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you, John. The pleasure's mine as well. It was great to meet you in person again for the
officially, right?
Yeah,
right.
The second time, but really
actually know who each other is, right? I was
we've talked loads,
yes,
over virtually, but yeah, no, this is a real treat. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, everybody. My name's John Myer. #LV reInvent 22. You can catch all the recaps